Hi, this is Alex from devstories.eu. LlamaIndex, Context-Augmented LLM Applications, Episode 14 of 14. Stop copying and pasting the same API and React boilerplate every time you want to test a new retrieval augmented generation idea. You already understand the framework mechanics, but setting up a clean interface to actually use your models still takes hours of repetitive work. Today, we cover the starter tools that let you scaffold to production in seconds. Building a functioning application requires much more than just an index and a query engine. You need a backend server to handle incoming requests securely. You need API routes to pass messages back and forth. You need a front-end client to display the chat history, render loading states, and parse the responses. Writing this infrastructure from scratch for every new dataset or prototype drains your time. To solve this, LlamaIndex provides a command line utility called create-llama. This tool generates a complete full-stack web application pre-configured with LlamaIndex best practices. You open your terminal and run the create-llama command. The tool then walks you through a series of choices. It asks if you want a Python backend using FastAPI or a Node backend using Express. It asks if you want a Next.js frontend to give your users a polished web interface. Then it asks for your data source. You can point the tool directly at a local folder containing your PDF files. Once you finish the prompts, create-llama takes over. It installs all required dependencies, it scaffolds the directory structure, it writes the ingestion script to parse your PDFs, it wires up the API endpoints so your front end can talk to your retrieval engine. Finally, it sets up the environment variables. You run one start command and you immediately have a styled chat interface running in your browser. You type a question and the interface will hit the backend generated, retrieve the context from your PDFs, and stream the answer back to your screen. You go from an empty folder to a working full-stack prototype in about 30 seconds. That handles web applications, but sometimes a web server and a graphical interface are overkill. If you just downloaded a long technical specification and need to query it immediately without leaving your command line, you use the RAG CLI. The RAG CLI is a tool built purely for terminal-based document interaction. You install it, then run a command to point it at your local directory of documents. The CLI automatically runs the ingestion process. It chunks the text, generates embeddings, and stores them in a local vector database right there on your machine. When ingestion is done, you run the chot command. Your standard terminal prompt transforms into a chot session. You ask a question, the CLI retrieves the relevant data, queries the language model, and prints the generated answer directly to your console. There are no visual components or web routes to configure. It is the absolute fastest way to talk to your data locally. Here is the key insight. You now understand the deep mechanics of context-augmented applications, from chunking documents to building complex agent routers. These scaffolding tools exist so you can stop wrestling with basic infrastructure and spend your time tuning those core retrieval strategies. Since this is the final episode of our LlamaIndex series, the best next step is to head over to the official documentation and try building these pipelines hands-on. If you have an idea for a completely different technology stack you want us to cover, visit devstories.eu to suggest a topic. That is all for this one. Thanks for listening and keep building.